to marriage now what? Ashley, so when you got married, did you talk about what you were going to do about your kids before you got married, before you had them, or did you wait till after you had them and then you and your husband decided what to do about them? What are we going to do with these twerps?
Oh, yeah. Well, we weren't supposed to have kids for a long time. But that lasted about 9 months. So we definitely didn't talk about it till after they were here.
So basically, they start getting to an age where situations start arising and you're like, okay, what do we do?
Yep, for sure. And what's funny is like our positions have evolved as we have gotten further along in the parenting road. And I used to be the hardcore one and my husband was the soft one. And now he's like way more hardcore than I am. And I'm just like, oh, it's okay. Let's just snuggle and give hugs and kisses and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, that's funny because it's actually backwards, or maybe even just perceived backwards for us. I'm so generous, to the kids, and my wife seems always irritated, Mm-hmm. But just because, and I'm just presuming a woman, mother, seems irritated or at her wit's end, especially with what's going on now, does not mean that there's just not that dynamic love for that child after,
Oh, gosh,
and
no.
So it's interesting for me to see, like, the rise of the anger, but then also through the love of that you have for the kid. It's an interesting dynamic of punishment, love, kind of that blend and wave back and forth of how it works.
Yeah, and I for sure have that too. Because being with your children 24/7 without a break, like my husband's not here, so my breaks are very, very small. If I do get them, it's exhausting. It's really challenging at times. But I just have gotten to the point where I try to be very aware of the words I use with my kids. And even though I definitely may get angry inside, I never ever tell them I'm angry at you. Because I don't ever want them to think that there's something that could separate my love from them. So I'm always like, I'm not angry. I'm just aggravated right this moment. Or I just need a second. Or what you did wasn't a good choice. So we have to figure out what we're going to do from here. Punishment's a hot topic.
Hot topic.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at punishment, it can go so many ways. Like, I used to watch my wife, and of course the kids were younger, so this tended to work more, but bribe. If you do this, I'll get you ice cream, I'll do this, I'll do that. You can watch your show, you can do. And so bribe, I know it sounds funny, like punishment, but basically it's still kind of punishment because you have to follow the rule to get the bribe. Mm-hmm. You have to conform to not being angry or being patient or something like that. So it does have a form of punishment. And then you have yelling, right? I can yell and that's a form of punishment. Or I'm going to take something away, or you're going to be in isolation by yourself, or spanking, or making you say sorry. That's a form of punishment. Basically you've got to humble yourself, you articulate the words, consider the other person, yield your feelings and say sorry. And so really there's multiple ways to look at punishment. And so what do you like? Do you try? Do you do the same punishment for all your kids? Do you see that some things work, some things don't work?
Well, it's definitely different for all of my kids because every one of them is different. So what works for number one may not work for number two, and what works for number two may not work for number three. And I
like how you did that. You hid which kid was which. You're like
yeah, we still talk about our kids in numbers when we're trying to be incognito. So but honestly, I feel like it's always changing. Like, have you found a one-size-fits-all for all of parenting?
No.
It's always changing. And it's like once I finally find something that's reaching my kid, then they're like, oh, we're done with that one. And it would be easy to default to punishment. And I'm not saying I never have, or I don't have moments where I'm just done and I yell or I threaten. My husband says I'm a big threatener. Like, I don't follow through because I hate punitive punishment. Like, I hate that it takes hurting someone to get your point across, to control. And so it takes a lot for me to get here. But my last resort is, okay, if you don't do this, you're going to get a spanking. And most of the time, my kids know when I get to that point that they need to do what they're supposed to do, because mom just doesn't ever get to that point. But, and this is just a huge flaw of mine, I would say 9.99999 times out of 10, I don't go that route. Like, I would rather look like she's just bluffing than to do that to my kids. And that may sound really, really bad, but my heart is not to control my kids. And sometimes I struggle with finding a way to get them to be aware of themselves and what's going on around them to make a better choice. See, it's even wrong saying that, isn't it? But to make a choice that's more appropriate for the situation that we're in, that it seems like you almost are controlling. I mean, for me, it's a battle knowing exactly what to do. And I question myself all the time. I'm like, was there grace in that? Should I have done that a different way? Should I, like, how can I express my heart to them while reaching theirs at the same time? And we, like, mutually come to an understanding to protect each other in these moments. Like, it's hard. It's so hard.
Yeah, it's almost like, what if we gave the kids the ability to judge how we judge?
Yeah.
Ouch. You know,
Yeah.
To basically see the judgment or the punishment through their eyes, you know. And it does happen, you know. I will say, like, my 7-year-old should be like, oh, you know, you should have done that, you know. But for me then to yield and be like, oh, yeah, you're probably right, you know. But it's like I try to do, say, well, you know, what should have I done? You know, what would you like me to do? What would have you done? How would have you done it? And just kind of get them to even think or interact with, you know, the different thoughts of, I don't like to say basically cause and effect, even though there is, but sometimes it's not even just cause and effect. Like, kids are procrastinators. So then, but I don't think procrastination is really even a thing. I mean, the result of it, but people do what they want to do and they don't do what they don't want to do. Mm-hmm. So is procrastination really a thing, or is it just that people won't do what they don't want to do? And so my question is if I'm punishing you because you don't want to do something, then is that right? You know, in light of, you know, or if I punish you because you're not doing what I want you to do. And so it's interesting to me about this cause and effect, or kind of how we approach the reasons why we punish versus what really should be punishable versus the results of punishing. You know, are we using punishment as a teaching tool? You know, do this or you'll get that. But then is that true in life? You know, if I say do this or you'll get this, a spanking, but once they turn 18, will they still get a spanking for doing that? You know, the results might be different. So if they backtalk their mother for doing something or something, just as an example, and I say, oh, you backtalked, now the result is a spanking. Well, then they go to work and they backtalk somebody there, they're not going to get a spanking. They might get fired. Mm-hmm. Or what if then I create this thing where they never feel they can backtalk or challenge, and then they feel like they never have a voice. And so it's just interesting to me, what am I, through my eyes of what they should do or not do, and how I'm treating them through punishment is going to be the results of not just immediately, but for the rest of their life.
Yeah. Well, and I think you just have to differentiate between punishment and consequences too, because there are natural consequences for any and everything you do and say. And so that's what I try and emphasize with my kids is, you may choose to do that, but there's going to be a consequence for it. I mean, cause and effect's a real thing, you know? I mean, if they go outside without sunblock and get in the swimming pool and don't wait on me to come and put it on them, they're going to get sunburned.
Right.
You know? Or if they're cooking in the kitchen and they turn the burner on and don't put the pan on there and put their hand on it, they're going to get burned. There's just natural reactions to anything, any and everything.
But are you going to take your kid's hand, put it on the stove, and say, this is the punishment that you'll get?
Of course not.
Right.
Of course
you know,
not.
So are we doing that hypothetically in other areas? You know, causing punishment when basically we look at the stove and say, no, I would never do that. But then what punishments are we doing that are hindering or affecting the kids in a way that we're not even meaning to, you know?
Yeah.
I remember I get a call from a dad, and the dad says, you know, oh, XYZ's happening, you know, between my daughter, your son. And, you know, it's like they wanted me to be, oh, I'm going to murder him, or, you know, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go talk to him. you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, well, obviously I need to start talking about birds and bees to this boy, you know? I mean, like I understand. I'm like, oh, well, okay, that's nice, you know? So now I know where the boy's at, you know? And, like, the guy's like, oh, you know, you need to do all these things to him. And I'm like, well, no, that just tells me I need to talk to him. And just other things like that, too, you know? What is it that made them do the things that they're doing? Is it because they're procrastinating because they don't like it? Is it because they like it? Is it because they don't understand it? You know, are any of those things deemable for punishment? And then what is the punishment? Is it, you know, take something away or you know, spank or physical or so it's not a one-size-fits-all type thing. And I liked, you know, just the thought of, if I've never made a rule about something, it's hard for me to then insert that. It's kind of like playing a card game, and I'm like, oh, yeah, well, we're going to put a new rule in here that's going to fit my life, you know. And so kind of the same thing, like if I haven't made a rule that the kids have never heard, and then all of a sudden say, oh, well, that was a rule, I just never said it, you know, and then spank them or something, grave circumstances, without a new warning or new thought or new conversation. Am I really helping the kids, you know? Right. And I think that's kind of the point sometimes we think about is even in our punishment, are we trying to help the kids, or are we just trying to help ourselves? Mm-hmm. Sometimes from a standpoint of sanity, peace, quiet, you know, like when do we get most anxious about, you know, our kids and what they're doing, playing ball in the house, is at 8 o'clock at night when we're on our downtime, we're on our peace time. And so now I'm going to punish the kids because not that they're doing something wrong, but it's affecting my world right now.
Right.
You know, and is that right?
Right. So are you saying punishment is selfish?
I think to some degree it's very selfish.
Yeah.
You know, I like to be honest about why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And if I was really honest, and I think most people should be, I'm completely selfish. Like, I love my wife, but I love myself more. I love my kids, but I love myself more. I honestly 100% can say I am a selfish person. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I could disagree with that. Even if I buy my wife a car and I drive a lesser value of car. So in that item, I might have helped or taken care of her, and it seemingly would say, oh, he loves her more because he drives a lesser value car. But then what am I doing? Maybe I'm buying snacks all the time for myself, you know, and it's like, because I love myself. And so for me, the reward wasn't that whoever has the nicer car depends on who I love more, my wife or me. But what am I constantly doing for myself? Am I constantly catering to myself versus her? I honestly, I don't think we really understand love. I mean, in all honesty, you know, we're talking about marriage now, what? And I'm basically saying, in this concept of a love relationship, I don't even think we understand it, you know. Just truthfully saying, I mean, I feel like I can honestly observe myself, my actions, the things that I do, the things that I don't do with my wife or my kids, that I love myself the most.
I'm just curious what women would say about that. Like, if the question was reversed. Because obviously, I know, but like,
you think you love your kids more.
I gotta figure myself out. Like, I gotta process this and be like, I would definitely say my kids, for sure.
So you love your kids more than yourself?
I don't know, Ben. I mean, I would definitely, like, by default say yes.
So you love your kids more than your husband?
I mean, it's kind of close.
Honestly, if I was ranking, I'd probably say me. Then, unfortunately, sorry, but I'd probably say my kids. And then I'd probably say my spouse.
But would you say your spouse because she's more independent and self-sufficient?
See, that's an interesting question, right?
Because, like, that's one thing my husband's always been really big about is, like, you're going to be independent. You're going to know how to do everything yourself. But, like, with our kids, we have to teach them this over, 20 years? So it's like we expect our spouse to be a certain way, like to be able to take care of themselves and to manage money and to keep a home and to raise kids and all this stuff. But we don't put that projection on our kids. It's like, oh, you know nothing, let me teach you.
Yeah, but there kind of is an element of punishment where immediately we take all the information that we know and how we would manage life, and then we say, why didn't you do that? You know,
That's
like for
true.
me, like right now.
Yeah.
So my son has a situation with a girl. Well, I would say, well, you know, you can't do those things. You shouldn't have done it and all that. So for me, I'm not cheating on my wife because I already have consumed that information.
Mm-hmm.
He has not consumed that information. So I'm generous to him to help explain that information based on the results of what he's gone through. But my wife, I would not be so generous to say, oh, well, you know, you probably shouldn't do that.
Right.
So then who do I love more? My son, who I yield the grace to of his experiences being new, even though my wife's experience with a man would be new or situation, but I'm way less forgiving.
Because she should have known.
Well, in my mind, based on what I feel or my beliefs or my thoughts, I would assume that she would... No. Right. But how many times you see this is going to get good. This is going to get good. If we're getting good and honest, if we're getting vulnerable, how many times have I done or said something to my wife that my comment maybe interjected doubt into her heart of my love for her? Case in point, if I were to say, we're watching a movie and I'd be like, ooh, that girl's beautiful. Now, my wife's sitting there trying to process this information.
Yeah.
What does he mean by that?
Yeah.
Does he mean I'm not beautiful? Is she more beautiful? Does he want to leave me? Well, should have I been a redhead? You know? And so then now off of that one comment, she's starting to create thoughts that could be true or not true based on what I said. Maybe even actions. Maybe she's going to the hairdresser. Hey, cut it shorter. Make it red. Do this. He likes that. You know, now she's feeling insignificant as a blonde because I said a redhead, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that process has ended up turning into punishment for her based off of something I said. And so that's what my interesting thing. Like, are we even saying things that are end up turning into punishment for our kids that we're not trying to produce? Oh.
Dang.
Dun, dun, dun.
Probably.
And back to the love thing.
Yeah. Gosh.
Sorry.
I mean, that's like a sucker punch to the gut, Ben.
You're welcome. Welcome to Marriage Now What? So, how do we do these things? You know, I mean, I think the best thing, obviously, is continually staying vulnerable, flexible, you know, be of grace, be of mercy, be of kindness. But these things happen.
Right. Of course. I mean, we're only human. And I'm not saying that to justify it, but, I mean, we get tired. We get worn out, you know? And kids aren't easy. I mean, golly. They're like the hardest, greatest thing I've ever done in my entire life. You know, it's like such a paradox. But I don't even know. Like, do we all do it unknowingly?
I think 100%. Yeah, I mean,
golly.
like knowingly or unknowingly punishment.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, like I try to be very aware of the knowingly,
right.
you know. And now you're like, but you're probably doing it unknowingly, Ashley. And I'm like, dag nabbit, you know.
Well, can we judge our parents? Can we throw that on the table real quick, lightly?
Lightly.
Do you think everything your parents said and did was on purpose? Or here's a better maybe question of the result that it produced in you, was their purpose of saying or doing those things?
Not everything.
But some things.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. I mean,
yeah.
Even as a parent that we do or we say things.
But we think there's purpose.
The parent.
Yes, of course we do. Right? But like.
Yeah, but now we're making the kid not only see the value in the punishment, but the purpose in the punishment.
When is there ever purpose in punishment?
Well, to get them to see correctly the right revelation that we think they should see.
But what about their revelation?
Well, there's the point. Then why are we punishing?
Knowingly or unknowingly.
Right. It's an interesting concept. And then here's the other thing is when you take into consideration behavior groups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, am I punishing because I'm analytical and my kids aren't? Or am I punishing my wife? And that's why I try to say, like, if opposites attract, and they do, and my wife's totally opposite from me, then how can I love my opposite more than I love myself when I'm in my skin? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I know I'm so familiar with me that her oppositeness of me is the things that irritates also. It's like, oh, I can't believe you do that. Well, why would you do this? Well, why are you twisting those cans so you can see the name or the label of olive oil? You know? And it's kind of like, I found myself doing that today. I'm like lining up. I had tuna and I lined up the A on all the tunas, you know, and it's like, what am I doing?
That is funny.
And so, you know, the toilet seat up or down. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, for me, if I love myself enough that I leave the toilet seat up, then I don't love her. I mean, is that kind of proving that I don't love her by the actions that I do because I'm making it easier for myself? Or, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure, Ben, put the dang toilet seat down.
I was just using it as an example.
But, I mean, when you put it in that perspective, it's saying I care more about myself than I care about how important that is to you. No matter what it is, toilet seat, making a bed, which I'm talking to myself right now because my husband just told me he likes a made bed and I hate making up beds. But, you know, or doing things just a specific way. I'm not saying, okay, hear me out, because I'm not going to get into the whole Southern wife has to do exactly what her husband says thing, because submission is a whole nother story.
Let's talk about it.
But...
Or you should be punished.
Right. Oh my gosh. But, you know, there are just some things we do because we love other people. I mean, whether it's a friend or a spouse or our kids, like, I do things because I love other people. So are you saying I love myself more? I
don't know. Do you love yourself more? I think that's kind of the concern.
That is crazy. Like, you're just blowing my mind with this. I'm like, holy moly! Like, it makes you question everything you do. It's like, am I doing this because I love this person, or because I want to selfishly gain something out of this, or, I mean,
It is hard. And even if you like go into love languages, like they say, if your love language is time spent, then you try to spend time with people.
Yeah.
Okay, but see, now you're loving yourself.
Oh, I know.
Because you're trying to fulfill the love that you are. And see, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, so if my kid's time spent and I'm acts of service or gifts or touch or whatever, now I'm saying my view on love language is more important than your view. Mm-hmm. So now am I loving myself more?
Right.
Because I would rather touch or do some of these other things than time spent.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be thinking about this all day. Like, everything I do after I leave here, I'm going to be like, okay, is that an Ashley love, or is that because I love whichever kid I'm waiting on at this moment?
Right. But then back to punishment. Am I punishing because it's myself, it'll help me, it'll bless me, it'll keep peace of mind for me?
Yeah.
Or am I doing it with specific teachingness, if that's a word, that will result in a productive, fruitful life in the future? And am I correctly analyzing that this will help this particular child in the future, in this area or other areas, or will it hurt and I'm not analyzing it right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, those are big questions, Ben.
And it's like we look at, should I spank or not spank?
Right.
We try to make it minimal, but it's a lot more to it.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. And like when we started out and you were talking about different kinds of punishment and how yelling's a punishment, I was like, oh, dang. Because, I mean, I yell. Like, my kids don't listen to me if I just talk to them. It's like they're completely deaf to my voice. But if I yell, then they're like, holy moly, she's talking to me now. Something's about to happen. And now I'm having to be like, am I punishing them by yelling at them?
But see,
like, because I'm wanting my desired result. I'm wanting them to listen to me to so that I can tell them what we're going to do or what I would like them to help me do. You know, like, it really is me trying to get all eyes on me in that moment.
To get your result.
Yeah.
And you were being honest. So the same thing for me is that was how I treated my wife. I would yell at her, demean her to a point that she would yield because all eyes were on me and do what I wanted. And then and I noticed the effect that every time I did that, I would get a result. So then what I had to do is I had to duplicate that situation, degrade her to the point that she would finally say, okay, I hear you, and then do it. And so then now I have to ask myself the question is the thing I desired her to do more important, which really was selfishness, more important than that, fulfilling that selfishness that I had for myself?
Yeah.
And I had to come to the point of, no, it wasn't. So me punishing my wife in just a humiliating way to get her under my demand was not worth it to me anymore. So I had to figure out what I needed to do to fulfill my love for myself, the desire that I wanted to have fulfilled a different way other than yelling.
Yeah. What'd you do, Ben?
I hired a cleaner. And then I made all the kids do the dishes. I mean, it was a win-win, you know? The kids, it's like, oh, let's put the kids to work, and then I won't have to yell because basically the kids will do it, you know?
Yeah, but I'm sure you sat down and you just talked to her.
Well, yeah. I mean, at some point, I when I realized that I have demeaned her and her voice and who she is and what she wants to do. But it's back to kind of that procrastination. You know, she, in her love for herself, doesn't like to clean. Now, some women love to clean. Some women don't like to clean. Some women like to cook. Some women don't like to cook. So here's the thing is, the love for herself not to want to clean, when am I going to value that love for her instead of demean it and say, you're a worthless woman, you should be like Southern hospitality, our house, our cooking, our kids, our clothes, our pictures, everything. We should have this perfect image. Rather, when did I value her enough to say, this is the way you love yourself by not cleaning. Why don't I come in connection with you, and how can we make that work?
Mm-hmm.
But it took a long time to have that conversation because I yelled at her so much that she was so defensive, scared, and her walls were up all the time, so I'd be like, let's talk about this, and she'd be like, hell no, like she'd be out of the truck. That's what it would usually happen. And I kept having to say, I don't want to fight, I'm just trying to talk about the topic. I'm just trying to understand the topic. What the topic is, the house needs to be clean. You don't want to do it because you love yourself not to do it. I don't want to do it because I love myself not to do it. I love myself more than you, so I'm going to punish you by yelling at you, demand that you yield yourself to me because I love myself more so that you'll clean the house. Not a good process. What do we need to do differently?
Yeah. And do you think that that's probably how we can avoid punishment altogether? Is just by having conversation?
As long as both parties are willing. I think there's a real... Right. I used to say this, as long as one person is willing to compromise, you won't fight. So if I say, hey, clean the house, and you're willing to compromise, we won't fight because you do what I ask.
Mm-hmm.
If I say, clean the house, she says no, well, now I can either say, okay, I'll hire somebody, compromise. If she demands. So now, but if we both say, no, you're going to do it, now we're fighting. And so as long as one person in the relationship is willing to compromise. Now, that's, I think, what we have to ask ourselves is unwillingly knowing, are we constantly asking the other person to compromise?
Exactly.
Which is punishment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm punishing my wife if she's willingly compromising every time to clean the house when everything inside her hates to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're showing her how much you value her, too, and how much you care about the love that she has for herself. Because we all have to have a little bit of love for ourselves. And if that's the way that she loves herself best is by not doing that, you're saying, I don't even care that you want to love yourself right now. I care more about me.
Yeah, but isn't that the interesting thing, though? If we can keep the unity of the person whole.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I start yelling, I break down her unity.
Oh.
If I can keep her basically in a love of herself thought,
mm-hmm.
then is she going to produce that love because she's happy within herself more in the kids and back to me?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, I think so. When women become moms, they take on a whole nother identity. And definitely, obviously, when they become wives. But, it radically changes when you become a mom. And so you have to preserve that for her. It's okay for you to be you. There's still you inside all of your titles. You know what I mean? Wife, mom, housekeeper, however that looks, you you just don't want to break that down by constantly asking her to compromise. You went into it thinking, oh, she's going to give.
Based on results.
Yeah. Right. For sure.
Once I saw the result of yelling and then she whimpered and started cleaning up everything, I was like, ooh, there we are.
Yeah.
And so then here's the question. I viewed her and honor her now as an individual woman and all that, but is it easier to punish our kids and not view them the same way as I took the time to view my wife, but we do that to the kids and we say, oh, they're just kids.
Mm.
Do I have the correct understanding of the value of them as an individual, of what they're doing because they love themselves?
Yeah.
Or what they're doing because they don't love themselves? Welcome back to Marriage Now What? Sorry, we had some technical difficulty yesterday. We're going to pick it up where we left off. So we were talking about kind of maintaining other people's love for themselves and, working that with our love and, what we do to make sure that we keep our own personal love about ourselves. And so we kind of talked about spouses, what I did with my wife and how I had to change things. But now when you take into consideration the kids, because I think maybe even their love for themselves is going to be more important as they start making other relationships with friends or bosses, and they start going into the world and how are they being treated, what's being said to them, what's not being said to them, all important things. And so maintaining a kid's love for himself and our love for them in this, how do we do that? We know how not to do it through punishment, but how do we do that? Because even for a kid, they don't even really know themselves, And I think sometimes we want our kids to be responsible, so mow the yard, do the dishes, clean your room, do these things. And kids are notorious about, not doing these things, chores, and then they want to get paid. And then it's like, well, when you're 18 or you're on your own, nobody pays me, I got to set my alarm. I got to do my work, the homework or stuff like that. They just don't want to do it. And so we kind of think that, well, the training that we need to do to get them to do these things is going to involve punishment. But back to the core of things, we use this phrase, be true to yourself. And it's interesting that I think we use that for ourselves, but we don't use that for our kids and let them be true to themselves for their life. Like we're not training them how to do that. And I don't even know that we know how to do that properly. But to be mindful of, if I'm going to use that scenario, be true to myself, shouldn't I be thinking, how can I get my kid to understand that scenario about himself, herself? Be true to yourself, understand who you are, what you are, how you are. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness. I just got reminded of a situation with my daughter a couple of years ago. She is the messiest out of all three of our kids. And we have 2 boys. So I just assume boys are really gross, but she's the worst. And for years I'm like, Adia, you have got to clean up after yourself. You've got to take care of your stuff. You've got to care about cleanliness. Because, y'all, it was bad. It was so bad. She would hoard trash. It was so bad. And she said to me one day, she's like, Mom, this is just the way God made me. And I'm like, no, don't work against me, God.
Right, right. God, why'd you have to make my kid a hoarder? Oh, I have a hoarder too. Wrappers. Hoards everything. Right.
It is the worst. And so it's like when you say be true to yourself, I was reminded of that with Adia, that she's like, I'm being true to myself. This is who God made me to be, and I'm a messy person, and it's okay. Right. And so I've fought it a little bit over the years, and we've made a little bit of progress, small amount. But I think what parents probably struggle with the most is giving their children the freedom to be true to themselves. It's like we can tell them that all the time, and we can try and even exercise it in our own lives, but sometimes we're scared of what we see when we do allow them to be true to themselves.
Well, and I think, how do you get a kid who's not taking on these type of responsibilities to perform? They don't even understand how to perform the things that we're asking them to perform. For us, we've been cleaning the house for years, and so we've got 20, 30 years on the kids, and we're like, oh, you need to clean your room. And they've got 20 months, and they're like, well, why? I've never done this new process before. Why do I need to do it? And so I think anything we desire for our kids to do, we should do it with them constantly to get them to see the purpose of it. So yesterday, Sam got some LED lights, and they're these strip lights, and he's like, I want to put them here, and I want to put them here, and I want to put them here, and I'm like, okay, great. And I was like, what do we got? And so I said, let's look at first what we have. I'm all about systems and planning, and so all right, we got this, we got that, and I says, okay, we should have enough. And then, we only have 2 brackets. So we have this 100-foot long thing, but we only have 2 connectors to splice it together. And I'm like, there's a problem here because we're hindered by what we can do creatively because we don't have enough pieces of the puzzle. And so we laid out and we did this, and it was like, okay, well, what would we have left over? We kind of marked it, with tape on the walls and stuff like that. And it was not to the plan that he wanted. But going through all the process of the possibilities of opportunity with what he had to work with, it took us 2 hours to hang these lights. And at the end, he was happy with what he got because he still developed the plan and image that he was able to do. For him, he still was able to create and say, I want this here, I want that there, And so it was cool to watch. And, at the beginning, I'm like all hands on. And, I'm talking to him about the process and showing him and all of that. And then by the end, I'm slowly letting go. I'm sitting back and watching. And then it got to the last strip, and I was like, all right, well, make sure you cleaned up. And I left the room, and so that he could manage it on himself. And so, I think that's the thing, too. Like, are we helping fulfill the true knowledge of their abilities first? Liz goes into the room a lot of times, sits down with them for hours, and do you need this? No. Try this on. Is it big enough? No. Have you ever worn this? No. And basically trying to sharpen their mind to think for themselves or ask themselves these own questions of, I never wear that. Oh, that's too tight. Oh, this, I don't really need that. Oh, all these bubblegum wrappers, I'm really not going to make a necklace out of them, But that's the thing is, instead of going in and being like, I'm going to punish you until you clean your room.
Exactly. To
get what I want, because I don't want to have to spend the time and sit there as a parent trying to train your mind how to think and process what I'm asking you to do. I just want you to go in and do it. I almost think like this, we forget the results of what we say. So if I yell at my kid and say, go in your room and clean it, don't come out until you're done. Here's the thing is, I'm thinking that's an action that they're going to go do and fulfill. But I forget that they're human and they have a mind. And in their mind, they're thinking about what a jerk I was. They're thinking about what they don't want to do or how they don't want to do it. And they're processing, not cleaning their room in a delightful, joyful way. They're processing the bitterness and hatred now for me because I was so mean and demanding. And the question is, again, why was I? Was it because I love myself? And if I'm mean and angry, I get a result that I don't have to put time and effort into. And that's why I'm saying, like, do we almost put up walls with punishment because it, like, protects us and don't bother me. I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to do it. And we're like, and if you don't, we'll punish you. We'll take this away. We'll hurt you. And that's an interesting thought to me of what are we trying to protect or what are we hiding behind our selfishness putting up these punishment walls?
Yeah. It's like we only care about ourselves.
And that's back to the point where I honestly feel like I can say,
you love yourself more.
I love myself more. Yeah. I mean, it's not like a lot of people honestly don't say, oh, I don't love myself more. But in all honesty, I mean, I think we do.
Well, if you demand your own way, of course you love yourself more. Because you don't, it's like giving your children permission to take up space in your life. If they don't do it the way that you want them to do it, then it's like, oh, I don't have space for that. You're not pleasing to me right now. You're not doing what I asked you to do.
I almost wonder, because you said that you love your kids more than your husband. And then you're like, no, because it's mentally questioning. It's like, oh my God, again,
Yeah.
But here's what I think also. I'm wondering, is it the things that you do for people, then you say, oh, I love that person because I'm doing X, Y, Z. And since you're doing so much all the time for your kids, you feel like you love them more because you're doing so much. Like, I know, like, one of the love languages is acts of service. So obviously, if somebody's doing a service, you would feel loved by them because they're doing this service for you. But I wonder if it's also the reverse effect. If I'm doing this for you, then that kind of indicates my more love for you. Case in point, if I'm doing more for myself, is that showing that I love myself more?
Yeah. My
favorite foods, my air condition level, my TV channel, my couch, my seat, my truck. So all the actions that I'm doing for myself, proving that I love myself more than the actions that I'm doing to help my kids or help my wife. Or
what if I'm just doing out of the love that I have for them? Like, take everything away that I could do for my kids or they could do for me, and I still love them like crazy. I mean, that's like just the paradox of parenting, that they can drive you absolutely insane and get on, or especially for moms. I know most moms will definitely relate to this. But they can get on your last nerve, and you can be counting down the minutes to bedtime. But right when they go to sleep, you start missing them. And then you're like, I just want to go lay with them. I just want to be with them. Can they wake up now? Like, I remember when my kids were babies and they would take these 3 and 4 hour naps, and I'm like, will you please just wake up because I miss you so bad, I mean, I don't know if I would go as far as what you're saying, because I think that there's it, and I struggle with this because I'm the oldest of 4, and so like I've had to overcome a lot of performance and perfectionist tendencies being the oldest child. So I don't think my motive behind loving my kids or my husband or my friends is always a performance thing.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. And okay. I'm not trying to say that it is, but maybe we judge our love based on our performance for others. Case in point, now I'm not a doctor. I've done a clinical trial or anything like that, my kids are still young, but I wonder from a point now that a parent who would have a 30-year-old who's not seeing that kid that much, who is not giving that kid money or, nursing or helping or providing or doing any of these things, they're doing less actions. And because of those less actions, would basically be feeling less of that love. Not in a demeaning way. I'm not trying to be demeaning. I'm just kind of saying, is that a natural humanity type thing? Because like you were talking about, well, when you did this, you said baby, right? Well, when the baby, you're literally doing everything for it, And again, I'm not trying to get too far off on, love. I don't even know how this conversation started, but I think it's a fantastic conversation, that we need to go a little bit deeper. Because if I say, tell me about your love for Mike, tell me how or why you love Mike, or why you love Mike more, or why you love Mike less than your kids, or you say, I can't think. In all honesty, I don't know how you prove love. Yeah.
Other than by actions, right?
Well, I don't even know that actions prove.
Like, it just doesn't sum up
love. I just like we're like, oh, I love my kids. Well, why? And how can you prove that you love your kids? Well, I feed them. Well, okay, but that doesn't prove love. Mm-hmm. So I think love is a interesting entity in itself. I mean,
Yeah.
How can I prove it? How can you prove it? I mean, if it's only by actions, well, then you would think almost any employee is, they're doing actions for you. I mean, and you say, well, that's a transaction, but isn't marriage also some transactional things? I mean, hey, I'll provide all the money for you if you provide, the household or the kids, or, it's kind of transactions. I'm not trying to downplay love. I love love. I'm just trying to understand, I think, some of these parameters that fall in love.
Yeah.
Because if I constantly tell my wife, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, what really am I saying?
Well, and to just bring this back around to why we even started this conversation, what about when we use love in conjunction with punishment?
I love you, so I want to punish you.
So I'm going to beat your butt. Yeah. I mean, I don't do that, but
sure.
I don't say that because that was said to me. And the last thing you feel when someone's beating you and they're like, I do this because I love you, is love.
Right.
It's the last thing.
Well, that's back to the mindset.
Like, you're not going to convince me you love me right now.
Right. If I send a kid to the room and I'm yelling at him to go clean his room, they're trying to process the anger, the punishment, not love. Like for me, I'd say, well, this will help you in the long run. Yeah, but it might help them be more productive in cleaning, but it's going to murder my relationship with them. Mm-hmm. Trust. A lot of kids don't talk to their parents because they don't trust them. Why? Is it because we've basically torn our relationship apart with our kids by punishing them for things that we felt they needed to have or do, or even protecting ourselves because I loved ourselves enough, and now we've destroyed a relationship with the very thing we say we love?
But not just a relationship, but even who that kid is. I mean, it's so easy to crush a kid's spirit. Just like what you were saying, trust in yourself, and my daughter's like, this is who I am. If I keep harping on, no, this is who you need to be, I'm pretty much telling her that her idea of who she is not valuable.
It's not good enough.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And we as parents do that, I think, knowingly and unknowingly. Because we just place expectations, on our kids to do and be a certain way.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, when you and Mike, are getting married, you're all gushy-eyed, and you're like, we're going to have kids. Did you say, we're going to have kids so that we can make sure that they are properly educated this way, and that they do this service and they do that service, and that they're clean or organized, or and I think that's the interesting thing is we don't plan to do these things to these kids, but then as soon as they come out, we start planning what these kids need to do and have and all that. And my question is, are we doing that more based off the love we have for ourselves, and we're trying to protect ourselves from going through things? Case in point, don't cheat on me. That's a good thing for my wife not to do, is not cheat on me. Why am I demanding I don't want her to cheat on me? Because I don't want to be hurt.
Yeah.
And so then, I say, I'll punish you, I'll divorce you, I'll do this, I'll do that. I'm only doing it because I'm trying to love myself and protect, because I don't want to go through those emotions. But if I say don't cheat on me, and I never fulfill her love, physical, mental, emotional, if I'm never making that connection. I'm hunting, I'm fishing, I'm doing all these other things. I'm doing business. I'm away from her. She's trying to call me. I'm not answering. I'm not talking to her at night. I'm not helping her. I'm not doing anything. But I say, don't cheat on me. Then am I proving my love? And, am I setting it up for failure? And I think that's one of the things we do with even kids. We can understand that scenario with husband and wife, but what would that look like with the kid? We're like, go in your room, do this, do your work, and like we never make time for our kid, and we're always punishing our kid, and then like we say we love you and we want to spend time with you, but then we don't take them places, we don't do vacations, we don't talk to them in the car, we don't have these conversations, and then they do something totally off the wall, and we're like, what happened? Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you talk to me?
Yeah. And then we're surprised.
My kid's such a bad kid.
Yeah.
Or were we just a bad parent because we loved ourselves too much?
Definitely that. Yeah.
It's an interesting point. I think as soon as you could challenge yourself to I know it's hard. I know like these commercials like Mother's Day is coming up, right? So mothers, you know, they always feel like they never do enough. And so I'm not trying to put on people be better, be enough, be more. I just think if we can kind of take down this wall and say, who am I really and what am I doing? And what will this do to my kid in 10 years? 5 years?
Well, and I think even if we go as simple as saying, if someone treated me that way, how would I feel? I'm not going to let my husband sit there and yell at me. You know, like I'm going to walk off.
Well, Liz would say that to me. She'd be like, you can't yell at me. And I'd be like,
but yet we'll do it to our kids.
I can, woman.
You know what I mean? We'll do it to our kids. And we tell them they can't walk off.
Right.
Like, you better listen to me now.
Get back here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was interesting when Liz, she would say, you can't talk to me like that. And I'd be like, yeah, I can. You know, I am. And then I'm sitting there later, I'd be like, damn. Why? You know?
Yeah.
She was right. Yeah, I was wrong. You know? And if I was wrong, then I have to change it. I have to figure out why. Is it because I was trying to get something because I love myself? And there's just always a way. It's kind of like that thing back to Sam is we only had 2 pieces, but we were able still to use the lights, and he was still to be completely happy, and we were still able to meet all of his goals, and he's delighted by the end result, even though we couldn't do his first plan. And are we taking the time with our spouses and kids to openly and honestly make sure that everybody's meeting every aspect, not that one person's yielding more than the other? And that's what I hate about the church, where they say, you know, the woman should submit unto the man. And that, because basically then they believe that's the plan. And if you're not submitting, then I'm yelling or punishing, and I'm treating my wife now as a kid, you know. And I don't think either of those applications are good applications for marriage or kids. So I'm challenged by new thoughts.
Good.
Final words?
That's good. Just listen to your kids. Question your motives behind your actions and the way that you react or respond to them. You know, just take the time and ask yourself, is this a selfish motive, or am I doing this because this is a need that needs to be met right now? And try and look at it through the eyes of your child. And bottom line, they're just kids. You know, we're giving them for such a short amount of time, and let them be kids. Yeah, there are things we're going to face, but man, I think love's going to win at the end of the day. Personally, let them be kids and check yourself.
Until next time.